I'm Dennis Stone at America's Stonehenge, and I'm standing at the entrance to the Oracle Chamber, the largest structure at America's Stonehenge. So this structure is actually orientated on an axis of true north and south, and I'm on the north-south axis. It's about 27 feet long. The east-west, which is off to my right, goes about 18 feet, and it is true east and west. We call this chamber the Oracle Chamber because of this particular hole in the wall. It's 6 feet long. And this was found during the late 1930s by one of the crew members named Paul, who worked for William Goodwin, the first researcher on the site. Paul happened to be inside this chamber doing a little research, study, and exploration, and he happened to notice a stone right in this position right here. And it looked kind of peculiar to him, so he wiggled it, and it was loose. He went back to what we call the bunkhouse. There was a wooden bunkhouse built for the workers, about 50 feet north of where I'm standing, and he got a knife from the kitchenette. He brought it down here, he wiggled the knife in here, and he was actually able to extract the stone, and behind the stone he found about a 6-foot hole in the wall. It wasn't till the next year when they were excavating around what we call the sacrificial table. The table appeared to be sitting on dirt, and when they dug down, they were quite surprised to find 4 stone legs supporting the table, and the east end of the table actually rests on the other side of this wall. And as they dug down, they actually found another stone that, again, looked kind of strange to them. They pulled the stone out of the wall, and what we have today is a 6-foot hole running east to west underneath the sacrificial table. And right below this hole, or what we call the oracle tube, there is actually a step that was left in the bedrock. So the bedrock has been quarried. The material probably is in the walls today, but they did leave this little step right here. And so somebody about 5.5 feet tall, maybe a little taller, about almost 5'8", can stand here. When they look into the tube, you can see the underneath the sacrificial table. And when words are spoken, the words will go through, and it comes out under the table. And if you're standing above the table on what we call the ramp area, looking down at the table, it almost sounds like a spirit or a god perhaps talking to you. And this would be very, very interesting to the observers during a ceremony perhaps. Maybe it was a shaman or a priest giving instructions, maybe telling about the future. But this kind of tube I have seen in Malta. We traveled to Malta in the late 1990s, and we saw this similar type of hole in the wall, and I asked the guide what they were for, and they were for oracle purposes. Below is another interesting feature, and this goes about 8 feet into the wall, and what we call the bed. And on this side of the bed, there's another opening we call the window, and we have several of those on the main site. But somebody laying inside of that, like a priest or shaman, might observe the inside of the structure. If anybody entered it that wasn't supposed to, perhaps, he would see these people. This chamber, we think, was kept quiet. Nobody would know about it. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You know, nobody knew about this hole here. That's probably why they plugged it up, perhaps. But this bed is about 8 feet long, and it runs horizontal. There's really no reason that a retired shoemaker, Jonathan Patty, would actually build something like that. And it's a lot of work that went into it. Just another one of these interesting parts of this chamber. It does have 5 closets. There's one in front of me, and there's actually 4 more down here. These closets are well built. They're into the walls themselves, and we don't know their function, but perhaps they're used for some sort of religious offering or something like that. Behind me on the north side of this chamber is a hole in the ceiling, and again, it was another find by one of William Goodwin's crew named Roscoe Whitney. He was actually the foreman. And when he was working on this end of the chamber, he happened to notice some stonework that looked a little strange above his head. And they couldn't quite figure it out until they went on top and they removed the soil. They actually did a little excavation. And when they dug down, they actually found a stone rectangular that was sitting over that opening there. And when they removed that stone, they found 2 stone, what we call louvers today. And these stone louvers could be used to adjust a draft. And this is another interesting find. Unfortunately, when we first opened in 1958, sometime after that, somebody got up here and took them away as souvenirs, we think. We've never seen the stone louvers since, but we have the photographs of them from both above and below. And at one point, Goodwin took them and put them on the ground down by letter E, and he photographed them laying down there. The other thing that's missing is that big rectangular slab. We think that slab actually, it looks like it has a channel that it could slide back and forth. And that way it can conceal that chimney. And Goodwin back in the 1930s actually tried that, but he didn't know about the chimney flue at that time. And when he started a fire, the whole thing filled up with smoke. Everybody was choking. When they found that, the next, few months later, they actually adjusted the draft with the 2 louvers, and the thing warmed up in 15 minutes, and they didn't have the smoke problem. We don't think these chambers were used for living purposes, but perhaps during ceremonies, people could come in here and stay. As you walk down this part of the chamber, the structure of it's different. This is vertical construction with big slabs on top, large roof slabs, weighing, in some cases, a couple tons. When you come down here, you can see that the structure actually, the walls actually go in towards the ceiling. It's called corbelling. It's like an inverted staircase, one stone slightly further in, and these are smaller roof slabs than the other part of the chamber. They're much larger. But one of the features I mentioned were closets, and we have 5 of them in this chamber, and one of them's right here. And opposite, we have this cutout in the bedrock, and it's like a stone bench. So somebody could actually sit here and actually could accommodate 3 or 4 people. Perhaps somebody was in here meditating and maybe putting an offering in that chamber. But again, for a practical purpose, for a farm or for a shoe shop, this structure makes no sense at all. This large rock here on my left was actually part of this large rock here at one time. It may have been broke by natural causes, and it might have been moved over here during the glacial period, or these people that built this chamber actually moved this about 4 feet. And you can actually see where the stone would actually fit together. This little notch here with the white paint would actually fit this little notch right here. And as you get down into this area, you can see the actual original shape of the rock. It kind of goes down at this angle. And over here you can see it's a 90-degree cut, but there are no metal tool markings found on this seat. You know, like if this was made during the 1800s by Patty family, I think we see the plug and feather, the little half circles where they split the rock, but there's no indication of any metal tool markings on this, or of course of any of these roof slabs which were actually extracted from the bedrock. So if you were looking down at the structure from above and you remove the roof, this structure would actually look like the letter Y. So back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, this chamber had a kind of a nickname or a name called the Y cabin because it looks like the letter Y. We don't know why, but that's the shape of it. We have 2 carvings in this end of the chamber, and one of them was found by Malcolm Pearson, and he was the gentleman that my dad actually was involved with during the opening of this site. Malcolm was here during the 1930s with Goodwin, and he photographed. He was a professional photographer. And one of the things he found was this, what we call the running deer carving. There's white paint around it today, so you can see it. It seems to have a head, a back, a leg, a front leg, and an antler. But the antler doesn't look like a deer antler, like a white-tailed deer or anything like that. So even in the 1950s, I think in the late 50s, they started calling it ibex. Ibex, there are several types, and they're in Western Europe. And the one I Googled a few years ago that looked more like this was the Iberian ibex from Spain and Portugal. The other carving that's in this chamber is above my head. And back in 1967, one of the guides at the time was giving a guided tour. We had been open 9 years by that time, and this little arrow shape was found here. As he was walking out, he happened to notice it, and we put white paint around it again to identify where it is. So we have these 2 carvings in this chamber. And these are some of the closets. There's like a closet, and a beautiful little closet here. And then there's like one hiding in here. In fact, when I was a kid, I didn't notice this one for quite a while. It took me a while when I played up here back in the 50s and 60s, and then one day I happened to notice it. It was already known by Goodwin and others, but it's just something that's kind of hidden in there. It's like, why would they do that? Because it's extra work to build that kind of thing. There are 2 drains here. The drains are underground. They're man-made. The drains have little capstones. One of them's near the entrance where we came in. It was cleaned out at one time. It's silted in with dirt today. We should remove that. That drain keeps the entrance dry. It still works. The water goes through the soil, and then it drains down through the man-made drain. They're like tunnels underground. And that one there, that's the entrance to it. And again, there's some silting in there. But that drain runs 45 feet. And Goodwin did some excavation on it, as well as others, including James Whittle in 1967. We have the photographs of him on the other side of this, opening it up. And it's amazing how well made they are underground. And you have to go through several feet of dirt, And sometimes when you open these up, you find tools, like even at home, things go into your sink. And this is a drain. We find tools, both historic and modern tools that get, washed into these underground drains. There are about 12 of these drains on the site. The longest one is 75 feet. And they're on different parts of this, what we call the main site, about a 1 acre area. But this chamber has 2 of these drains. Now, where I'm walking out today was not an exit. This was originally just somewhere in this area here. This is all walled in. This is a window. And it kind of faces the south. And one thing we're interested in finding out is we have illuminations like with the watch house, which is another very complex structure. We have an illumination for the spring and fall equinox. We were wondering if that deer carving might get illuminated during a particular time of year. We're going to try to use an app called Sunseeker, or one of these apps, and actually see if we can see that, because the problem is we still have a forest out here. We have a great big huge tree right here, and it blocks the sun. So that's another thing we're interested in. So this chamber has so many different features. It's so sophisticated in its design. It's something very close to what I've seen in different sites throughout Western Europe, the megalithic sites, in some ways, particularly like in Malta. We saw a lot of interesting structures with features, and some of them quite like this. But thank you for watching. I'm Dennis Stone at America's Stonehenge.